All right, thank you very much for staying with us here on Morning at NTV. It's the Kickstarter segment, and we shall be exploring the policies for the tea trade industry bailout and analysis of what's happening, including the latest developments in the sector. I have a comprehensive array of panelists who will be helping us understand what is happening, what ought to happen, and what should have happened long ago in terms of streamlining tea trade in the country. But let me first give you a preamble. Tea was first cultivated in Uganda in the early years of the 20th century in the botanical gardens in Entebbe. That was then the capital. The crop was a success for commercial cultivation, and the industry right now employs about 60,000 people and supports the livelihoods of about 500,000 across the country. But this week, some members of parliament expressed concerns in what's happening within the sector, especially with regard to the fall of prices. We shall have an MP from one of the tea growing constituencies talk to us, and officials who are also embedded heavily in the business of tea. Allow me to welcome Igara Robert, the CEO at the Uganda Tea Development Agency. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us too, Vicky Ashabahebwa. I hope I got that right.
Yes, you did.
All right. You are the director at Swazi Highland Tea Company.
Yes, I am.
Many thanks for joining us.
Happy
and of course,
to be here.
Honorable Mbwatekamwa Gaffa, Honorable Member of Parliament for Igara West.
I'm humbled to be here.
You had suggested that I shorten your name, but being a broadcaster worth his salt, it is not in my stead to do so.
I prefer to be called Mbwa. That sounds so nice and romantic.
Oh my God. All right. We have a panelist who is still soaking in Valentine's Day. But let me begin with Mr. Robert Ejiku, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Uganda Tea Development Agency. The latest developments in the tea industry are disturbing, to say the least, and of course many who are in the sector are hurting and looking for answers. If you don't mind, take us through what is the latest and what should we be training our guns on.
Thank you, our moderator. I think the viewer out there has been hearing about what we've been terming the tea crisis. And that tea crisis, what it is basically that the prices of tea in the world market have fallen. They have fallen by over 250%. Now, that has led to, it has cascaded downwards into crisis in the businesses that are involved in tea, right from the farmer to those who are involved in the secondary processing of the tea to be exported to the market. Tea, as you know, you've already given some background, at one point was the third highest foreign exchange earner. Today we reckon about 150 million in direct foreign exchange that comes into the country. But with this crisis, it's going to be hard to say we will even bring in, for the previous year, $100 million. Now, over and above the prices going down, there is somebody who is behind this tea. We have a farmer, we have large estates, we have factories that are processing the tea. They offer employment. You've already given some figures there, which I think are really understated, because direct employment from tea, it's in excess of 150,000 people are directly employed in tea. And then if you take the multiplier effect that has in the communities where tea is being grown and the factories are established, it's many things. The transportation of tea, the social services in other sectors as well. But we use power, we use diesel, we use a lot of things.
That's right.
So that, when you look at that multiplier effect, it's a huge impact. You're talking of millions of jobs that will be lost if this industry were to collapse. So this crisis has mainly come about because of two reasons. One is that the market got suppressed. And the suppression in that market is in our main markets. And something happened in those markets that I think Ugandans ought to know. We talk about markets, we talk about an international market, but most of our tea, up to 90% of it, is sold in Mombasa at the auction. So most of that tea goes to a number of countries, very many countries, but the main ones are Pakistan, the United Kingdom, Egypt, Russia, and the Confederation of Independent States, what we call CIS, Sudan, Somalia, a little bit to South Sudan, and then the United Arab Emirates and the Middle East. We like to put those together. Now, remember, the type of tea we produce is black tea. And so there are many centers around the world where black tea is being sold and being produced as well. So, but when on the demand side, that crushes the simple economics. You still supply either the same amount or more, and then at the end of it all, when the demand side crashes, then prices are likely to go down. And this is what has happened. Now that has been suppressed. What happened in Pakistan? Pakistan political and economic crisis. You all know that, for instance, the Pakistan Prime Minister two years, I think ago, Imran Khan, was deposed. That crisis led to an economic crisis in Pakistan. Started political, went to economic, and then they were hit by a catastrophe. They had floods for two years. Their rice and cotton production was
heavily affected.
Heavily affected. And those are two cultural commodities that make them the most foreign exchange. And when they were affected, so they didn't have foreign exchange to put in imports. It is only last September that World Bank gave Pakistan $3 billion. But you know, there's a rate at which that amount of money will be absorbed into that economy for it to begin to have an effect. And then they say, we have enough dollars to begin to participate at the same level as we were participating 2 years ago. The UK, Brexit, obviously, you know what Brexit did. Tea became expensive. Tea from the UK going into Europe became expensive because the Europeans introduced tariffs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so tea became expensive. And then Russia and the CIS states, we don't need to elaborate that, you know, the conflict that they have had there, it also suppressed the market. And Russia, for instance, takes about 10% of all world tea, black tea consumption. 10% goes to Russia. So that's a huge amount of consumption there. Egypt suffered because of the Russia conflict and now the Middle Eastern conflict. But Egypt also, like Pakistan, had the issue of shortage of dollars because their economy also crashed. Up to today, you can look up the information. Egypt is still in the doldrums. They are still not up there, out there. Sudan now, how did Sudan actually affected Uganda most? Because we know, but for those of us who have been in this sector have been in the sector for 25 years, for those of us who have been in this sector for that long, know that we have variations in the quality of tea that is processed in this region, which we take to Mombasa. The Rwandan tea is of a much higher quality. The Kenyan tea follows suit, and then Burundi, and then Uganda as well. So for our quality of tea, but our quality of tea used to be good. Now we will need to interrogate, why did our quality of tea in the 90s that was beating Kenyan quality come down to what it is, and now we are in 4th place in terms of quality. So we need to interrogate that a little further. If we have time, we'll go into that. But just to conclude this, but for our quality of tea, Sudan was our big market. Sudan was able to take that quality of tea.
That's right.
So when this conflict hit in Sudan almost 2 years ago, business got disrupted. Their participation in the world market, that's the Mombasa market, came close to zero. And that impacted Uganda's teas the most. Because if you look at the drop, across the board, everybody dropped. Kenya dropped, Tanzania dropped, Rwanda dropped. But Uganda dropped the most of all of them because the Sudan market went quiet. They are beginning to come back, but we've not felt that impact yet.
Okay.
So until things change, then they'll come. So that's basically the case. So we need to work on two things. One is our quality of tea, because that we can say there is demand for high quality. That demand for high quality tea is still there. Actually, a lot of demand, because today Ugandan factories are selling at 60 cents to 70 cents on average.
Okay.
This was 150 cents about a year and a half ago. So today they are selling at 60 cents. Now, there is a factory in Rwanda that is selling at $5. That's 500 cents. There is a factory in Kenya that's selling at 300 cents. So you can see that difference. So as Uganda, we have to invest in improving the quality of our teas. And I think government has a role to play.
All right, Mr. Jiku, we shall be delving a little bit deeper into quality issues and what ought to be done to ensure that we return to position number one. It's very disturbing to hear that Uganda is number 5, literally, in the region. You can't be behind other countries. It's just unacceptable. But allow me get the perspective of Madame Victoria Ashabahebwa. You are a director at Swazi Highland Tea Company. Yes. Your perspective as a key stakeholder or a trader, so to speak.
Thank you so much. Good morning, viewers. I am happy that we are able to come on air and speak more about the issues that are taking place within the tea industry.
That's right.
As a small individual investor in the business, we are struggling a lot with the working capital, because most of the individual investors, the smaller individual investors, depend a lot on the outgrowers giving you tea. Most of our business, most of our factories, most of our estates only contribute about 10% of the production requirements. So you find that you have to source the rest from the outgrowers. So if you don't have enough money to pay because of the competition within the different factories, some are paying cash, others are paying, So we are struggling a bit with that, and the report of the last sales shows that about 43% of the teas that were offered at the auction were unsold. So all those delays cause a lot of trouble with all our capital requirements to pay for electricity, to pay the salaries, to pay the farmers, and the loans. We have a couple of loans running, interest payments. Some of the individual factories had started to expand, so they had acquired more credit.
That's right.
Yes, so you find it is a bit difficult to place these things in a time like this. So we also find that most of the regions, or all of them, all the factories, depend on SACCOs within the region, like Chamhunga People's SACCO in Bushenyi district.
That's right.
We pay our farmers and some of our workers through these SACCOs. So if you're unable to pay them, and these workers or the farmers have acquired loans, they are unable to pay. So there's a ripple effect right there that has been caused due to the price drop at Mombasa that we all entirely depend on. So
that's right.
It's a very frustrating matter, and we hope that we can come up with solutions or interventions very, very quickly to improve the business.
Okay, we're glad we have a legislator with us who should be having a lot of information on what particular interventions would be undertaken by the government to ensure that this particular shock is dealt with. But you're also a representative of communities that are involved in the growing of tea. So we shall be getting two perspectives from you. First, within the prism, or rather the context of the outgrowers or the communities, how affected are they? The other day we saw in the papers that up to 40, is it 40? Should be a number like that, are planning to close. When such factories close, a lot of people are affected.
9 have closed.
9 have already closed. Loss of employment, loss of ability to collaborate. Circles that she has just said depend on the tea industry will also be unable to dispense money readily to those who are supposed to get it and do other businesses. What is the situation like?
Thank you so much, and good morning once again, all the viewers. I wish to state that as outgrowers of tea in this country, we are not happy with the government, which is supposed to provide solutions for all farmers. This is the true reality of what is on ground. Most of these companies that we supply tea have taken more than 4 months without paying outgrowers. And this is what it means. We have responsibilities. Today, the senior four exams are going to be released. What does it mean to a farmer in Chamhunga or in Igara? This means that much as people see you having tea chambers and you're plucking every day, your child is not even going to go to school.
For purposes of clarity, you are an outgrower yourself.
I'm an outgrower of which, as I speak, I've already uprooted 10 acres of tea. And I think NTV has even those pics. And I'm intending even to uproot more if government doesn't do anything. And even some people have started uprooting, but this is not the right way we should go. Because me, I can uproot because I can be having an alternative. But most of the farmers were convinced that since we have acidic soils in almost all of Western Uganda, tea can do better. So most of people who are ventured into tea growing, even you remember 3 years back, NADS was even supplying seedlings to these farmers, and it was government promoting tea growing to our people. But currently, it is a very big shame that much as these factories are shutting down and some are at the verge of shutting down, government has kept a deaf ear. We've tried to speak as members of parliament because we know there is what we can do. First and foremost, I wish to tell you that one of our cardinal roles as members of parliament, we are supposed to legislate, we are supposed to appropriate. Now, you just look at, when we talk about now legislation, we are expecting government to come up with a policy
for you to debate on.
For us to debate on, to make sure that this gentleman has talked about the quality of tea. Unless we have a regulator, and unless we have a policy on ground like what is affecting the coffee industry. Remember when they brought policy for coffee, people started improving the quality. They used to dry coffee on ground. They even employed the GSOs, the PSOs, to start arresting people who are just drying coffee on soil, on the ground. Things improved, and that's why we started realizing that with tea, with coffee, the quality was improving. But here, this is laissez-faire. Government has not intervened. We've been crying for this policy. We've been having even authorities like Coffee Development Authority, and they were taking care of everything to do with tea promotion, coffee promotion and whatnot. I'm sorry I'm talking about tea because I'm a tea farmer, and so...
No, you don't have to be, because that's...
But for us, we are real orphans in this government because we don't belong anywhere. Of recent, you saw government, yes, government tried even to create a ministry in charge of animal husbandry.
A docket, which is
a docket, and just put a minister to be in charge of animal husbandry, meaning that Now the government is trying to invest more in cattle farmers, unlike people who are doing crop production. And this is our survival. This is our survival. Without tea, we cannot survive. So for us, we are telling the government, please, we can bring a policy to make sure that we regulate whoever is in this tea industry. If it means we are supposed to pluck 2 leaves and a bud to get the quality, then we go by that. Government has failed, and it only thinks about cattle farmers, leaving alone us. Secondly, listen to me. Okay. I'm trying to see what is in our means and we can do as legislators. Okay. Secondly, these people are crying. Loans are choking them. Markets have failed. So through appropriation, government can come up with a plan and bring the supplementary budget to bail out these tea farmers, to bail out to these factories, because they are helping us to earn a living on daily basis.
Allow me hold you in your tracks first. There's something we need to be very clear on right now. The crisis is mainly brought about by the drop of global price of tea, and that has kind of cascaded down and led to other effects, including the closure of factories, and these factories cannot pay the outgrowers. Before this crisis became what it is right now, what was the legal framework or policy cover around tea? When you talk about a policy and you're asking government to come up with one, it's as if there isn't a framework that is guiding tea production in the country.
It's not there. It's not there.
So under what tea policy?
There is no tea policy.
What are you operating under?
You know, that's the background to the statement he made, that the tea fraternity is orphaned. We're not even in an orphanage. At least in an orphanage, they'll look after you.
Yes.
We are completely on the streets. Wow. But lately, of course, Ministry of Trade has been trying to do something. Ministry of Agriculture. So we have an interministerial...
What is that they've been trying to do?
An interministerial effort to come up with a policy. But that policy has just been in the shelves for a very, very,
Has there
long
been
time.
Consultations on that?
Yes, there has been consultations. There is even a final draft that a team of experts plus the stakeholders worked on. They sat in Ginger for days on end and came up with this. This document is somewhere gathering dust.
All right, gentlemen and lady, we shall be going into what the draft has as to give us an idea of what kind of policy can be rolled out to ensure that order returns to the tea sector, but most importantly, you respond to the challenges, including the shocks occasioned by the global market, as effectively as you ought to. Let's go for a break. When we return, we shall talk about that and also understand why uprooting is it a solution or not? We shall be talking about that. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break. Still with us, we are in the Kickstarter section or segment of the program, and we are exploring the current challenges that are facing the tea industry, especially in light of the drop of the global market price for tea that has occasioned the kind of crisis in the country that has seen some outgrowers and farmers begin to uproot their acres of tea. That is a disturbing development on its own. We do not know whether it is a solution to the problem or part of a protest that should condition the government to act. In studio, I have with me Robert Ejiku. He's the Chief Executive Officer at the Uganda Tea Development Agency. I also have with me Honorable Mbwatekamwa Gaffa, Member of Parliament for Igara West. He's also an outgrower. I have with me too Vicky Ashabahebwa, a director at Swazi Highland Tea Co Limited. Honorable Gaffa, when people begin to uproot these stalks, are they trees of tea? Let me call them stalks of tea. Are we protesting? Are we quickly finding a solution to the problem?
Actually, it is out of frustration that we are uprooting. It's not because we have even any other better solution. It's like being in a toxic relationship, but you want to pretend to the public that all is well, much as your husband or your wife can strangle you, and you want to pretend that all is well. What we are doing, we are even trying to show even the government, you cannot conceive. After conceiving, then after even delivering, you strangle your child, and you start attending people's children's birthdays, and you even clap and say all is well. This is the government that provided tea seedlings.
Wow.
This is the government that has even, when these factories were to be owned, the most factories to be owned by farmers, even government had an input in these factories. So after doing all this, providing tea seedlings to farmers, this is the child of the government. But later now, it has abandoned. So we are trying to show the government that we are disgruntled. We are not happy. And we have solutions we can do. This is not a rocket science that we need to think about going to the space, how do you land, the gravitational force. It's what we are doing. If in Parliament we are seeing almost every year, even if one single cow is sick, the president would have known by morning. And all the DVOs will be instructed, facilitated to go and see what is happening. Currently in Parliament, we are trying to bring a supplementary bailout to give farmers vaccines for foot and mouth disease. We are happy and we don't have any problem with that. But the way we are trying to assist farmers, this is how we need also to assist the tea farmers who are in crisis. And we have no alternative, only to get a supplementary. Let me tell you this. The supplementary we are talking about, we need to first bail out these factories because the loans are choking these factories. The cost of production is so high. Take an example. The biggest cost, it even goes to running these factories through electricity. The cost of electricity in Uganda, even if at your home you don't have even any machine that runs in kilowatts, but the cost of electricity in Uganda, that's why even few people can hardly even use the cookers, electric cookers and whatnot. So we are saying that if we can see that a kilowatt currently, these people, these factories, they are buying it at 3,471 shillings. Unlike people who are in an industrial parks, whereby for them they have a subsidy to electricity. They are paying a kilowatt 1,928. So this means that you cannot compete with these people. So we are trying to tell the government, electricity is generated from even Chira. Then we are having Karuma. We are not importing electricity here in Uganda. So we need to first think about these factories, that why shouldn't we say that now we are helping you, you can also benefit from this power at a kilowatt at 1,920. We are also trying to tell this government, they are telling you that our tea, when it reaches Mombasa, they even have they incur a cost of putting this in warehouses, and they are not certain when. Let me tell you a story.
Who incurs the cost? The farmer? The companies? The
companies. Now they foot the bills. But let me tell you what is so funny, and Ugandans will understand me.
Okay.
The warehouses, the so-called warehouses, these are government buildings owned Uganda Property Holdings, and you know what? Honorable Minister Anite is the one who is in charge and taking all that money because they tendered. And these are the facts we are saying now. Even one way of bailing out to these people, the farmers, the factories, if our tea goes from here, those houses are Ugandan houses, which were even built long time ago, not even by
these were houses we are talking about are the ones in Mombasa.
Yes, government property of government of Uganda built by Obote.
You've just made an allegation that I would love you to clarify and give us a little bit more information. Minister Anite is responsible as a supervisor? Because when you say she's taking the money, what are you trying to imply?
Not a supervisor. Her company
Which
is
company?
the one. No. I don't want even to know, but the company that runs, takes care. Yes, the company that takes care of Uganda Property Holdings, it's her company. And now our question is, if government sees that our tea from Uganda, people are incurring a lot of costs and we have these properties here, why shouldn't they say, first and foremost, whoever brings tea here, you're not going even to pay these warehouses?
Honorable, we have players here who are taking tea to Mombasa. Are you paying the costs for the warehouses? Which company are you paying to?
I think he has the Honorable has his source of information, but Uganda Property Holdings manages the warehouses that were built by government of Uganda in Mombasa. But not all of them under one company from whom we warehouse. For instance, I'll give you an example. Some of the warehouses that are under Uganda Property Holdings are currently being run by United East Africa Warehouses Limited.
United East Africa
Warehouses. It's a Kenyan company that is hiring those warehouses, and that is where close to 80% of Ugandan teas are being warehoused.
Now, my brother, the biggest challenge is these are Ugandan warehouses.
Yes.
Why should we even put a foreigner or a Ugandan to run, and these people cannot even put their tea?
Let him share that detail completely. This company hires, who hired, the company has been hired to run on behalf of government.
Yes, on behalf of government. I mean, you have a building, you're renting it out, you are renting out space. So the government's representative there is Uganda Property Holdings.
Uganda Property Holdings.
Uganda Property Holdings, that is a Ugandan company.
So
that is responsible for running the warehouses. Let me be the effective journalist here. The Ugandan company, the holding company, has hired out these warehouses to a Kenyan entity. This Kenyan entity is charging you to the warehousing charges for your tea. Now, I think maybe particularly
that's interesting.
Probably the Honorable was trying to bring out a different challenge.
That there is another company that is owned by Minister Anite that is also operating like United warehousing.
Okay, I don't have any information about that. That's why I was saying.
They cannot tell you that because they are scared. The next time they will even not be allowed.
Let him say what he knows.
Just leave me that information.
Yes, but what I'm saying is everybody pays for warehousing in Mombasa.
That's right.
Even the Kenyan tea producers pay for warehousing in Mombasa. In our warehouses. Now, but Ugandan tea goes into bonded warehouses, and that's where for us that becomes a trade barrier, a non-tariff trade barrier, and that's of concern. It's one of those things we're saying, how does government come in with our export processing zones or creating free economic zones within Mombasa? Can it help us so that when I take my tea there, don't hold my cash flow into paying for warehousing somewhere when it can be in a free economic zone, and then it is sold. It is from there that it is dispatched to whichever destination it's going to. Or it's taken again now into a local warehouse, and that's out of our hands.
How is it on your end?
We personally, as a company, we also contract United Warehouse to warehouse our teas, and we've been doing quite well with them. Our only issue, like my brother says, is the bonds that are attached to these warehouses. And I think also the biggest challenge we have is the third parties that are involved in the business. So they leave so many people back home having questions that are things being managed well? Our teas being traded competitively? Do they represent us effectively for us to get the best prices? Yes, because this is something that the warehousing it cuts across, whether you're Kenyan or you're Rwandese or from Burundi.
Yeah.
As long as you're going to trade your teas in Mombasa, they have to find a home to stay until the buyers can take them.
So would you say that the warehouses that fall under Uganda's ownership are sufficient? That's a question for any one of you.
Yes, please, allow me. I think let's not concentrate on the warehousing.
It could.
The warehousing is a small component of our costs.
It's a small component, but he raises a concern that makes it very controversial.
Moderator, time is going. we are going to leave out the big issues that we want to present and concentrate on the really tiny issues. Let's spend major time on major issues. What are those major issues? I said earlier that we need to improve our quality of tea. And how are we going to improve that? There is all that we can do. There's a policy that the Honorable has just mentioned, the policy we talked about earlier. But there is something else. Tea is a foliage crop. It depends on how much you give it nutrients. And that is where fertilizer comes in. The cost of fertilizer in this country has been going up. It has probably gone up 5-fold since 2019. By 2019, a bag of 50 kilograms of fertilizer was going for 90,000, maybe less for those who buy in big. 70 who buy in bulk. But for the farmers, they were buying it at about 90,000. But today, the cost of a bag of fertilizer is 245,000. Now, what has happened is that tea requires that fertilizer, and if you can't afford it at that cost, you're not going to apply it. For the last 3 years, I think we've applied less than a third of the fertilizer dosage that is required for our tea. And that has been part of the reason why the quality is so what it is. It has been dropping. So whom do we look up to? We're saying, government, what can you do? Now, in this crisis, we're saying, can we get a subsidy on fertilizer so that we start immediately returning these nutrients back into the soil and get that quality that we want later? But that is a short-term thing.
That's a short-term
And we don't
solution,
need that subsidy to be for the life of tea. No, we are asking for a subsidy for probably 2 seasons a year. Or if we think this problem is not going to be resolved, we do it for another year. You asked earlier, just in the break, that what are the other countries doing? Kenya gave a subsidy to all its tea farmers. Kenya has over 600,000 tea farmers. They gave a subsidy for fertilizer. And today they're enjoying. Rwanda gave a subsidy for fertilizer. Tanzania gave a subsidy. Burundi gave a subsidy. So Uganda has been the only country that has given subsidy elsewhere and not for tea. Because we know the SDP program, the Honorable knows about that much better. The SD program, which was being run by the Ministry of Agriculture, gave subsidy for fertilizer. But it was targeting, I think, some grains and coffee. But the kind of fertilizers used in for those crops are not the same as that for tea. So tea is specific formulations. So we are asking for a one-time intervention on that. Then subsequently, we must look at how do we sustain this. What about sustainability? Because fertilizer, you're not going to say you apply 1 year and then you won't be applying again for the next 10 years. So how do we sustain that? We now require to look at the options of getting fertilizer manufactured here, and it becomes cheaper. We visited, our company visited a processing plant in Toro. Actually, the processing plant is ready, but probably they have either cash flow issues or they have management issues that they need to resolve before they can start processing fertilizers. And they told us if they started processing fertilizers from there, although the raw materials will be coming from China and so on, they would be able to afford to give farmers fertilizers at 100,000 a bag. That is much better. But I am also aware in several meetings, interventions, we've tried to seek from government. We had a meeting with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister openly read a letter from the President asking for her to find land for a Burundian company that's now processing fertilizer in Tanzania and Dodoma, to set up a fertilizer plant here. That in the long term, in the medium to long term, will be the solution to our fertilizer problem. Because once we can manufacture it locally here, and some of them actually use local materials. They do the semi-organic kind of fertilizer. It's not completely inorganic fertilizer.
That will have a huge
that's what
multiplier effect and help out some other people.
Using cow dung, using whatever organic material that's there, and then they blend in with a little bit of the inorganic substrates, and then we'll get our fertilizer.
Talking of measuring in major issues, what proposals do you have for immediate and short-term and long-term solutions?
Of course, here we want to speak more about the short term because it's a crisis, and would like to get results as soon as possible. The subsidy for fertilizer, would want to also have a stabilization fund. We had requested for a fund of about 126 billion. Yes, Uganda shilling. Uganda shilling. Yes, that we would, as factories, would distribute evenly according to our production. So would use the production records that was stable. I think 2021 or thereabout was a bit stable. So would use those records to divide the money amongst ourselves to see that we can effectively reach even the grassroots. So this money, when it is always better to have the factories receive the fertilizer, because when we have it, we distribute it to our farmers or even our own estates, and the way they pay, we give it to them on credit, so they pay it back with the green leaf that they supply. So when they supply, there is a little that is deducted to cater for that particular fertilizer grant. Yes. So we want to emphasize that those are the two areas that we feel need to be worked on as soon as possible. There are so many long-term interventions, like the policy would definitely need to be more regulated than we are right now. We have so many conflicts that come about our international trade. We have tried to do some direct sales, but we struggle a bit when you are on your own. You have no, we work under Uganda Tea Association. They have done very well to cover us, especially as far as the tea auction is concerned, because you cannot trade on the auction without a recommendation, from the Uganda Tea Association. But still, it still needs a lot of support with the policy and perhaps an agency like all the other products have. An agency
to do the hand-holding across the region and on the international market.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. So we just to go back to the impact, we are seeing a lot of trouble with even household families. The issues that have arisen from default in the loans. Unfortunately, of course, most of the breadwinners are the men at home. In the villages of the farmers, outgrowers. So you find that if they have defaulted, the bank is going to, or the SACCO is going to come and take them the property that they had put as collateral. Or they will just run away, leaving the women in charge,
unable to take care
to you know. So even the women themselves, through there are some small groups that we've been creating. One is called the Women in Tea. We're trying to also create new products from the same tea. Like some of the women have been trying to process some specialty teas, but even then they're not, we still don't have standards for these teas. So we are not yet sure if we can also penetrate with these new innovations within the industry into the markets that consume them. Because how many people consume white tea in Uganda? Very few people know about it.
I don't know about it. So, Honourable Member of Parliament, I want you to wear the jacket of the legislator and take us through what the short-term solutions are with regard to mitigating this crisis.
Thank you so much. I think the immediate short-term, I think what we can do in the shortest term to make sure that is bailing out these factories. Government, I think through the Ministry of Trade and Tourism, the minister should come up with a supplementary immediately. And we pass a supplementary, consider how much each factory has been producing. If a factory has been producing like 10 tons, we depend on what it produces to bail out. Maybe say we are giving 3 billion, such that it can help to recapitalize the business. Secondly, I want to look at a warehouse. I still insist, because it is an extra cost.
Yeah.
These are our warehouses, Uganda Property Holdings. These people shouldn't even be incurring any cost when they are taking tea commodity in Mombasa. Secondly, we need to look at the issue to do with the power. We cannot even close our eyes that this one should be for a long term. I'm telling you, if you just look at their expenditure, I think the biggest expenditure even right now, the money that is choking these people, the money is to do with electricity, power. Because I last got to know that Igara Tea Factory, they are demanding over 400 and I think 70 million to do with power. Then our power is not even constant, it's not stable. It is here, within few minutes, it has gone away. We are depending on diesel to run these factories. Now, that one I cannot say that government can do much. But if we can reduce the cost of power, electricity, then at least we know that if power goes, then there they can even bear with that one. And they can even run these factories. We are trying to look at loan rescheduling. Almost these players, they're having loans in banks. Even some microfinance support center, which is run by government. I've seen so many there looking for money. The government should come up immediately. We negotiate with these banks and we reschedule the loans such that these people should not run out of business, because we need them. And this one government can easily afford. Then I'm just looking at, I've talked about agriculture inputs, they've talked about it. And this one, why should we even say that for the short term and they leave us? No, it should be the duty of the government. The money, the foreign exchange that comes into, you've mentioned that the, last year it was over $100 million. Now, if we consider that, that's money that comes to the government. We need, this one should be constant, that a bag of fertilizer should never exceed even 50,000. Government can do that, and you see tea is very tricky. If you don't apply fertilizer, even when they are mentioning about quality, we shall never get that quality, because it does not come up well that you can go and track. So I'm just calling upon fellow legislators that this is the time I need your support most, and even most of the legislators who happen to come from tea growing areas. Instead of debating about succession, like of recent what I saw, there is no serious Ugandan, there is no able-bodied Ugandan who should discuss about succession, who wishes to succeed an economy that is in shambles. Who wishes to do that? Instead of discussing about succession of this country who is supposed to be the next president, Sijui, let us discuss about economic succession.
Do you intend to move a motion? Could you give us an idea of what that entails and whether it could be a minority report?
No, recently when we were in Parliament and I raised the matter as the matter of national and urgent importance, the minister came up and said that Minister Bahati acknowledged and accepted and said, look, there is a cabinet paper which has been there, and they are claiming about a cabinet paper that now they are going to discuss, and Right Honorable Taebwa told him that he gave him an ultimatum that we should present by next Thursday because we need to see what the government is bringing on table to make sure that we can bail out these farmers. However, allow me to say
quickly
that yes, that our tea is our survival, the way I'm dressed. We can only survive on tea. And even the Bible says, whoever is not against us is for us. It was said by Jesus. So if the government is not in for us, then we are not in for the government.
All right. Mbwatekamwa Gaffa, Honorable Member of Parliament for Igara West, a tea grower and one of the stakeholders in the industry. They are making his case for intervention on the part of government. Let's now go for a short break. We'll be right back to conclude this discussion and hear what can be wrapped up, especially in terms of ensuring that those who are affected get back to their feet.
Morning at NTV.
All right, thank you very much for keeping it here on Morning at NTV. If you are just joining us, you do that as we enter the final bend of our Kickstarter discussion today morning. We are exploring the crisis within the tea industry that has been occasioned by the drop in global prices, and of course farmers across the country are reeling, many of them choosing to uproot some of the trees that of course these many the tea leaves grow, and that is not the best solution, especially in light of what might happen in the near future. We shall be understanding exactly how they can do, or whatever they can do to ensure that they stay the course. Joining me, or joining us on site, is Nicholas Rukuura. He's the HRM at Toro and Mityana Tea Company Limited. He joins us as we do enter the final bend. And of course we do still have Vicky Ashabahebwa, Director at Swazi Highland Tea Company, as well as Honorable Mbwatekamwa Gaffa, MP for Igara West, and also a tea grower. But let me interest myself in Nicholas Rukuura for now before we end the program. I understand there has been a meeting between key stakeholders and the Prime Minister with regard to the immediate short-term interventions that can be done. We've talked about them. Proposals have been shared by Mr. Robert Ejiku and Madam Ashabahebwa, but you do seem to have been part of that meeting, right?
Yes, please.
Take us through what you discussed and what particular resolutions were adopted.
Thank you so much, moderator. Good morning once again, all the viewers. Like he said, I'm called Rukuura Nicholas. I'm the Human Resource Manager, Toro and Mityana Tea Company. We are here today to talk about the tea crisis in Uganda. The tea crisis in Uganda has affected a lot of people. Like the brief background which was given by my colleagues. Yeah. If I can tell you, over 1 million Ugandans derive their livelihood on tea. And this is really, really very bad. And it is affecting so many people. Back to what you have asked me, I happen to have been part of the authors to the document that went to the president when the crisis was looming. We had to write to the president to bring it to his attention that this is what is going on in the tea industry. Good enough, the president directed the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister called the Uganda Tea Association members, which I'm part and which they are also part of them, and that was on the 2nd of November last year, 2023. We met the Prime Minister at the Prime Minister's chambers. The questions that were putting before the Prime Minister, she was like, these questions seems to be going to different ministries. And since those ministers were not around, she said it is better we form a committee and we go back and we streamline those questions according to the ministries. So the minister on her side, she picked the Minister of Local Government, that was Honorable Raphael Magezi, to lead the committee. And as we were 6 members, who went and joined hand in hand, and then we had to streamline those questions according to various ministries. Then on 4th of November, we came back and met with all the ministers and other permanent secretaries from various ministries to discuss about the tea industry. And we are really showing that the tea industry was going to collapse. So from there, after having those discussions, we were promised that they were going to prepare a cabinet paper, which we were supposed to present before the cabinet. But I want to assure you, up to now, we have never got any feedback. Despite all other subsequent meetings which we have been hearing taking place, but we as UTA members who met with the Prime Minister by then, we have never got any feedback.
Allow me to ask you, I'm sorry to hold you in your tracks, it's effectively my job to do so. Allow me to ask you, before you, on what specific aspects do you want feedback on?
First of all, he called us to meet, and we tabled our proposals.
What were those?
So the proposals were very many. We are talking of subsidies on fertilizers.
Okay.
We were talking of subsidy on electricity, on fuel, and so many other things. But in the process, we were advised to zero down on two things.
Okay.
That was 50% subsidy on fertilizers. Because people are talking of quality. Uganda tea doesn't have quality that matches with Rwanda and Kenya. And for your information, for those who know tea, you cannot survive tea growing if you don't have fertilizers. That's true. And the whole reason for why fertilizers have not been applied for the last 2 years, the last 3 years, is because of the prices of fertilizers went high. You all know what is happening in Russia. Russia is the major suppliers of fertilizers. But since the wars came in Russia, the price which we used to buy a bag of fertilizer that is 50 kilograms at almost 80,000, it is now at 245,000 shillings. So you can imagine factories, farmers cannot afford to buy that. So we were forced to tell the government that please come in and assist us at least by 50%. Then we contribute the 50%. We had even identified a factory in Dodoma, which was willing
to supply.
Yeah. So we also came out and zeroed down on one stabilization fund.
Yeah.
We said now to keep on moving because tea is very bulky in terms of work that is supposed to do. Because when you look at paying workers, you look at electricity, you look at power. Actually, when you look at fuel, you look at chemicals, because you cannot survive if you are not spraying herbicides to kill the weeds. So all those need money. So we said, please government, this is what we want you to help to assist us, because if these factories closes, all these people will come back to do what? To demand the government so many things. So we are calling upon the government to come in and help us.
In light of the fact that there hasn't been any feedback, and I'll just keep with you very briefly on this before we can transition to Honorable Gaffa and Madam Ashabahebwa. In light of the feedback that you need and that you have sought, are you waiting on, or you have specifically pushed in any one direction to have it, and you've still, doors have closed on you?
Actually, I think this is one way of alerting them that please, we are still there. And this is still continuing to affect so many people, because my company where I work, we have resorted to downsizing labor.
That is Toro and Mityana Tea
Company. We have resorted to downsizing labor because
you're laying off employees.
Exactly, we can't afford. We are trying to tell these people that please, considering now, you can imagine our cost of production is at $1.23. But currently we are selling a kilogram at almost 30 cents. It is a very big loss. We cannot afford to continue maintaining these people. And we are again appealing to the government that we know government may be having a lot of problems, could be having other sectors which are also having
more priority areas,
absolutely,
so to speak. Yeah.
But this tea that we are seeing here, and people seem not to know what tea is, and yet this is a common thing that in our cultures here in Uganda, that everyone in the morning wakes up to take tea. But when you come to ask someone that, do you know where this tea comes from? I think you will even get surprised to find even high-profile people in this country may not understand what is this. But there are so many people who are benefiting from tea. So if the government just sees this sector collapses like this, it is really a shame. And we have been making an alarm almost since last year, and up to now we are still singing the same song.
All right, Mr. Nicholas Rukuura, that's a very further eye-opening revelations that you bring on board, and of course I'm sure you do agree entirely with the fact that the speed or the amount of attention that the Prime Minister has, well, not offered this particular issue is something that should be hammered down as much as we can. In light of the way forward, because when I said we were going into the break, we had to come and wrap this up. How do we move in case there is no feedback in the short term? How is the industry going to shape its own response to the crisis?
First of all, as producers, I would expect that now, like my colleague has mentioned, you're cutting back on costs as you continue to improve the quality. The quality of the tea will improve the prices at the auction, which is our major market for the tea. So with the improvement of quality, the price increases, and then somehow we expect that the crisis will sort of flat out. But I would also encourage all the producers to become more efficient in their production, to try and save as much as possible, you know, and then also to create more awareness about the consumption of our own products here, because most of our teas are sold at the auction or even abroad, like 95%, and only 5% of our own teas
returns to the market.
Not returns, is sold here directly. But the tea that is sold to the international markets is blended. They add a bit of spice and they bring it back to us to consume. But this is our tea
at a higher price.
At a higher price. So we need to have a more nationalistic view of this crisis, to encourage our fellow men and women of Uganda to consume more of the Ugandan tea, and to also look into ways of adding value, so we could have a better product to send out that is of a higher value than it is now. I would like to also point out, like he mentioned, so many people know nothing about tea, but tea in its nature does not give us a chance to abandon it. I mean, if you abandon it, it is a loss that could last 100 years, because when you plant tea, this crop could last 100 years. So you're looking at many generations depending on a single crop. You just simply maintain the crop. So it is more, and it is a community-based affair. We are dealing with transporters, we're dealing with farmers, you're dealing with circles. So it is really a holistic view of our homes, you know, because tea is home for some of us.
Okay.
Yes, so I would like us to look at tea more in that line. All
right. Thank you very much for that. Honorable, for your case, we are looking at a lot more intervention and exertion of pressure on the powers that be to intervene as soon as possible. Like I said earlier, I don't know what your next move is in the coming weeks.
First and foremost, I think we are going to push, we are going to do all it takes to make sure that we also get a stabilization fund and benefit from the national cake like any other region is benefiting. This one I need to be honest. Remember, government has been putting money in attack sugar, of which us as trade committee, I sit on trade committee. We didn't recommend, but they've kept on, and it has never produced anything, but it has already sunk more than 400 billion. We've seen also Ruboa, which we've been singing here.
Ruboa Hospital.
Ruboa Hospital. We've already put more than 400 billion in that venture, and of which the marriage is not even working up to now. Then we've seen government previously used to put in some factories under UDC, Uganda Development Corporation, like Mabare. There was the time we put 1.3 billion to bail out Mabare to make sure we can recapitalize. So now this is the right time that all the factories that are involved in tea, government must come up and act. And we shall compel our government to act, because we know how best it can listen. In most cases, if you're too royal to this government, they don't listen. I will use any avenue.
All right.
I'm ready even to use any party so long as it can help me and address the demands of my people. That one I must tell the government. But what we need to do, even in the shortest term, government should now think about exempting taxes to these people who are exporting tea.
That's right.
Because that one, it is within our reach. That's why even a kilo, it is a shame that a kilo of tea here in Uganda, we buy it more than 6,400 shillings. And now you can hear on international market, the cost is even less than $1. But here it is our country, meaning that the process they go through up to exportation, our warehouses, the taxes, it makes even tea more. And they cannot compete. Then I'm just encouraging my government, we need to now start investing in research. Because even the seedlings we are having, they are even outdated. In coffee, people have had Simanyi C1, C8, Simanyi what, everything, all the varieties. But what do we have in tea? And this one, the research docket will help us to make sure that we can venture in other tea. Do you know that we can even get caffeine in tea? And good caffeine more than even coffee. We can even think about green tea. You just see these Chinese who are selling herbal. They are using green tea. And how many shambas, acres, hectares do they have? In most cases, they come here, extract juice, the green tea, they take and bring us herbal. So we need to see, can we encourage other people to enter into a cottage industry that can begin even production at home, to venture in even what we call orthodox tea? It is also there. And it is fetching a lot of money. But we are still using rudimentary all the practices, even when we are trying to plant tea, even the production. So we need even to think about what can we do to change the production line to a more viable venture.
Okay. All right.
So, yes? I just call upon my people.
You made that point very clear.
Yes.
That you're going to use all means.
All means.
I hope
if it means ferrying people in buses and in big numbers to come and camp at State House, we have that capacity.
Aren't you
if it come to Parliament and they sleep and they see them that they are vulnerable in their government, we shall do that.
Honorable, you're guilty of releasing trade secrets for politicians.
No.
All right, let me come to Mr. Nicholas Rukuura, rather. My apologies for mispronouncing that name. But the issue of insurance bonds, I don't know whether you are pretty well versed with that, or you can give us a comment on it. But I think Vicky will do that very shortly. The non-tariff barrier regime across the region. We seem to be the proponents of the East African integration.
Absolutely.
But again, we are crying. Kenya's tariff regime just doesn't listen or doesn't give us the opportunity to practice trade fairness with regard to the agenda we are pushing in terms of East African integration. Do you have a comment on that? Because it's one of the proposals that should be undertaken to make the Ugandan tea competitive.
Like you said, East African community, where we expect all of us to be breathing the same. But this seems to be different. Actually, this issue, once again, I happen to have been the author of one of the letters that went to the Minister for East Africa. That is the Deputy Prime Minister.
Honorable Kadaga.
Honorable Kadaga. It was unfortunate that I thought I would meet her physically, but I didn't. But at least I managed to write.
Yeah.
We were trying to express what we are going through. We have what we call a CB8 transit bond, which is when our teas are crossing Malaba. And then we have these bonded warehouses in Mombasa. And the fact that our teas have been segregated as a result of those two issues. How? When buyers come to buy our teas in Mombasa, they have to first break that bond before that teas is bought. You find the Kenya teas, they don't have that. So for us, you find a buyer looking at, first of all, it is time wasting. When you look at the paperwork, you find someone has already prepared his teas, he's already in the ship and he wants to go, but when it comes to Uganda teas, you have to pass the process of breaking that bond here, saying this, saying that. So you find someone, he will either come to buy your teas at a cheaper price because of that, of those delays, or he will end up leaving it. And at the end, we are the one who are what? Who are losing. So my appeal goes to the Minister for East Africa, that please, we wrote to you the letter. We want you to engage Kenya government, that this is East African community. Why is it that our teas have to first go in bonded warehouses? Well, Kenya can't. So please, we are calling upon the minister. You come and sit with the Kenya government and make sure that these things do not exist.
Unless the president intervenes, the ministers in this government, they don't have any say. They don't.
It's very unfortunate. Okay.
Thanks for the revelation, Honorable.
Okay.
Very lastly,
my last point will be, I want to appeal to the government that I think this is the first time they have ever had tea coming to make a lot of noise or complaining. And I think this is the reason as to why most people seem not to be understanding tea. Because we have been doing our business, supporting each other, and going on well. And we contribute a lot, because when you look at the foreign exchange, the revenue that the government, we are almost having 150 million US dollars. That we are
significant contribution.
Significant contribution to the economy. So please, we are calling upon the government that please come to the rescue of this industry. It is a very lucrative industry. It has fed a lot of people. Please come for the rescue.
All right, that is an appeal coming through from a tea industry stakeholder. I'm afraid we're going to have to end it there. I would love to thank you. I should.
Parting shot.
Parting shot?
Yeah.
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Thank you, moderator. I would like to encourage all the producers, all the processors out there, and all the farmers that not all hope is lost. We are still going. For those who have closed, it is very unfortunate, but we are doing our best to make sure that we get this done, we get heard, and we get intervention so you can come back on board, because our livelihood depends a lot on your production. Thank you so much.
All right, Vicky Ashabahebwa,
Stabilization Fund.
We want money. Many thanks for your perspective, and thank you for making that point very clear. Honorable Mbwatekamwa Gaffa, MP for Igara West. You're also a tea grower and key stakeholder. Many thanks, Nicholas Rukuura, HR at Toro and Mityana Tea Company Limited. And of course, earlier we spoke to Robert Ejiku, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Uganda Tea Development Agency. Many thanks to all of you for helping us understand and embolden our understanding of matters tea. Now, I think it's about time Chris Higenyi goes and gets himself a cup of tea. It's been a pleasure having your company here on Morning at NTV. We shall see you tomorrow. On behalf of my colleagues, have yourselves